There we go. We should be online. So back to the introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fireside Chat. Today, we'll be going over like a lot of questions. It's going to be a little less formal than a traditional live event because you're actually allowed to speak this time around, which is kind of nice. But in relation to the ground rules, because there's probably going to be quite a lot of us in this particular meeting, then I would very much suggest that if you have any questions or anything related to anything that our expert panel are going over today, then we've got this nifty little raise your hand feature up at your top bar, where if you feel like you have something that you want to question the panel or the experts that we also have, or the panel and the technical experts that we have on the meeting today, then you can just press raise your hand and then we'll give the word over to you guys, right? That way we can keep it a little under control if there's some sort of controversy going on, right? But back to the agenda, we'll do some brief introductions, which will be done by our very own president, Bob Duffy here at Firesoft. He'll be briefly going over that, and then we'll go into a brief scenario of like just the Synapse overview to set the context, and we'll have some supporting case study slides to also give us some context to start a potential discussion and any questions that you lovely folks might have out there. And then we'll, of course, finish off with a Q&A, but as I mentioned, being less formal, then you're very welcome to ask questions during anything that's being said during this presentation. Furthermore, as Rajeshwa so nicely pointed out to me, is that if you please would just mute your microphones during this, and when it's your time to speak, then by all means unmute and ask the questions. That sound fair? Brilliant. We will also have a very, very brief poll during today's Fireside Chat. Just 5 quick questions that we can use to sort of like gauge where or what questions you guys might have, and we can use that also as a context-setting discussion. Okay. So with that, I will actually give the word over to Bob, so he can quickly run through like just who we are in brief details. Okay. Bob, take it over.
Sure. Thanks, Jasper, and welcome everyone on this fine day with Snowmageddon just on the horizon for us here in the Pacific Northwest, and lots of inches of snow coming our way. We're happy you can join us in our little Fireside Chat and hopefully stay warm. Just a little bit about myself. I've been consulting to Microsoft and with Microsoft since back in 1995. I live and work out here in the Seattle area, and one of the advantages that we have as a vendor is we actually have our corporate offices on Microsoft's Millennium Campus in Redmond. So we are literally about as close to Microsoft as can be, with them working underneath us, around us on campus there. That gives us a great opportunity to work with Microsoft and with their technologies even before they get released. So we started working with Synapse, what you're going to hear about today, way back early last year. And you're going to hear about some of the work we did implementing Synapse on one of Microsoft's critical big data systems last year. And working with our colleagues at Microsoft and with the Synapse product team to make that implementation a success. And Prasad will go, and the team that are here today will go into a little more detail about that as we get into the today's talk. Just a little bit about us. Firesoft is we're 1,500 consultants globally. Of course, I mentioned we do a lot of work with Microsoft in the cloud and helping them manage their data. We also work with our customers out in the field, implementing enterprise systems integration. We help customers implement new technology to drive them forward. For instance, we just recently migrated a company called Cabot Microelectronics in Chicago we migrated their on-prem SAP instances to the Azure cloud, right? So, and we do a lot of cloud migrations these days. It really, I think, is interesting to see that things on the cloud side have turned from, whether they should move to the cloud to, when and how. And those are the conversations we're having these days with all of our customers. So we also do a lot of work with Microsoft's next generation cloud security product, Sentinel. We recently implemented that at Columbia University in New York City. So on to the next slide, Jesper. Just a little bit about our areas, just so you know, we work across Microsoft's main pillars, the modern work and security, Azure, as well as apps and data. On the security side, we work with companies to implement no-touch IT, we call it, where we implement M365 and Intune, where our IT customers like the Georgia State Treasurer uses that to they ship laptops straight from the manufacturer right to their employees. But it allows those employees then to log in and come in under as a managed device that's highly secure, including extra login credential, physical credentials for login to really keep them at the very highest level of security in the field, and especially in this remote work days. And as well, our bread and butter, why we're here today, is our applications and data practice, where we help customers spin up Synapse and see what it can do. So without further ado, let me introduce our facilitators today. We've got Ahmed Sherif from Microsoft and Prasad Praluri from Firesoft, who just a couple of weeks ago led a workshop on Synapse. Some of you may have attended that workshop. That event was so well received, we decided to bring them back, kind of encore tour here in a more informal setting, along with some of their team members that actually did some of the hands-on work at Microsoft with Synapse, and go into some deeper learnings that we gained in working with Synapse and the Synapse product team so far. So hoping that we've got something here for everyone to learn from our experiences to date. So over to you, Ahmed. Take it away.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you all for joining us today. Really happy to be back to speak up on this great topic, especially with Prasad. So just a quick word about me. My name is Ahmed Sharif. I'm a CSA at Microsoft, focusing a lot on pushing AI and ML solutions on Azure. I work with the One Commercial Partner team at Microsoft, which is basically our organization that deals directly with our partners and helps enrich them, give them anything that they need, access, hands-on keyboard, or just architectural advice in terms of what's going on to get them to the next phase, or even just helping them with some early access to some of our products that they can then be able to help bring to market. Especially with Synapse, being that it was highly marketed early on, folks were talking about it and wanting to get access to it even before it was generally available. And very few of our partners had access to what Firesoft was able to get access to, and they've been able to get in there and provide a lot more feedback that folks were asking about, that we even as Microsoft were able to benefit from. So very happy to be speaking on this topic today, and how we at Microsoft are looking to leverage Synapse moving forward. So we can move on to the next slide here, Jasper.
Actually, Prasad is running the show today.
Yeah, sure.
Or Prasad, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No problem. So when we're speaking about Synapse, one of the things it has done is it's not necessarily introduced any new technologies per se, as much as it's really help sort of consolidate existing technologies and create that unified platform. So most of the time when we're talking about big data or sort of the data landscape, it's you have your unstructured data that's sitting in that big data platform under a type of a data lake. And then you have your more traditional relational data for data warehousing, dependable daily workloads. You got your data engineers, you got your data analysts that are leveraging it versus your data scientists, maybe some of your software engineers leveraging the stuff that's coming in from the data lake. So one of the criticisms or one of the fears for making that next step to the cloud is that Wild West, that landscape that cloud offers you. You're just not aware of what's being provisioned, who has access to it, where it's residing, how much it's going to be charging you for using it. So the nice thing about Synapse is it's been able to sort of bring those two together. And if we move forward with the next slide, you'll kind of see that it's sort of given us the best of both worlds by leveraging both the limitless capabilities that you have with distributed computing, distributed storage with something like with a Spark cluster, but you still have that traditional layer to do your analysis, your reporting, your querying together. And also, it's introduced sort of the new modern way of doing querying, which is leveraging a notebook or a notebook cell or a notebook interface to do some of those steps in your execution phase. So now you can be leveraging that type of a notebook to do data science workloads, but you could also be leveraging it to do data engineering workloads as well as traditional data warehousing workloads. So it's kind of made that unified interface, which brings in all those different working pieces together, and it really brings in it really allows you to sort of keep that synergy between your team, so that allows for your everybody's aware of where their work is being done, and it also allows for cross work to be done. So you have people who can be taking on other roles within your team, and it allows for easier cross training. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide there. And so really Synapse, in my opinion, there are 4 areas where it's going to sort of give you that that next step where you may not be in right now, or you're looking to get to. The ability to scale up with a data warehouse and scale out with a cluster to do all types of different workloads. The integration with Power BI is key. Other platforms, you'll find that all the work pre-BI work maybe is one phase, and then your BI workload is all being extracted in a different workload. And then what ends up happening is you lose out on some of those capabilities that you came to that point with. So having that Power BI integration with natively really makes life a lot easier for your business users and your data analysts. Being able to sort of keep track of everything, we could stay on that previous slide for just another second there. Being able to keep previously, understanding where every service that's been provisioned, knowing where it stands, how to get to it, is really an added value that you don't get for any extra cost. So it's all there. It was there before, but you had to go search for it. Now it's sort of given to you natively. It's a lot nicer. And then because you know where all the services are, you're able to keep track of who owns what rights to which services and who is responsible for maintaining it. And knowing who's responsible for it also tells you who's going to pay for it. And those are all important things for security as well. Now we can go on to the next one. Yep. And because of that, one of the things that we found really beneficial is that your cost for leveraging Synapse really is a fraction of the cost of what you find some of our competitors on the market in the cloud. One of the most basic things that I was speaking with a partner yesterday is the ability to pause a cluster in Spark, for example. You don't want to shut it down completely. You might just want to pause it. That's a feature that's available within Synapse, and it gives you that ability to not have to reload constantly some of those clusters as you want, and it keeps your costs much lower than they were before. That gives you sort of that faster time to insights. You have lower cost of ownership. It's all just going to give you the ability to fail a lot faster. So if you want to try something out, you can get that answer quickly. If you do get to an answer, awesome. If you don't, then at least you know you're not going to invest any more additional time in that area. And that's really what we want to help our partners do. Is we want to help them, constantly be iterating, in reinventing, not having to deal with a lot of infrastructure on that end as well. And really, the nice thing about Synapse is it's only been in the market really for a few months as generally available, but we have a lot of our customers who are leveraging all of it or several parts of it in the market already and finding success because it integrates so easily with our SQL data warehouse, with our Azure machine learning services, with our data pipelines for doing ETL. You might find yourself already just 1 or 2 clicks away from integrating it into your platform because you've leveraged the individual features that make up Synapse. You can now sort of bring it into a fully fledged workload experience. So we've had very little barriers to entry for getting our customers up and running quickly. And as you can see, we have a lot of them right now, which Prasad and his team will be talking about how some of the experiences and some of the use cases that they've had with the success of Azure Synapse so far.
Thank you, Ahmed. Really insightful about Azure Synapse, a quick introduction there. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a quick poll to understand the audience better here so that we can drive the next part of the session, deep diving based on the profiles of our customer. So Jasper, can you share the link in the chat so that it's 5 questions. I can bring those questions as well.
Yep, I already shared the link. So don't worry, it's just a traditional Microsoft Forms. Just a quick 5 questions, and then we'll wait a little bit, and then Prasad will take that into a further discussion. And if you guys also have a question to Ahmed or some of the items that he was discussing just now, by all means, just raise your hand and then pitch in if you have some questions for him right about now. That would also be appropriate.
Yeah, these questions are pretty straightforward. We are trying to understand whether you have data, you ingest data from multiple sources and multiple systems, and are you dealing with semi-structured, unstructured data in your organization? And are you experiencing any scaling issues with your current data platforms? And also want to understand where your data resides. Is it more on-prem or in the cloud, or is it more hybrid? It's multiple choice here. And try to understand whether you're using Synapse to any capacity here, whether you're exploring, or you've already piloted, done some POC, or you have implemented Synapse already, or you have not tried. So that way we can cater this second part of the session very targeted to the audience here. Yeah, I see that many of you agree that you have ingest data from multiple systems and sources. Yes, you are ingesting semi-structured and unstructured data, and you all have some kind of data scaling problems in your current data platform. And also there, I see that it's a mix of data center, AWS, and Azure, and hybrid. And it looks like some of you have been exploring Synapse, and few of you have not tried Synapse here. So thank you for this. And then in the meantime, if you have time, please fill this survey, and then I'll present at the end. So a quick introduction, everyone. So I'm Prasad Paluri. I'm Director of Cloud Services here. I lead the data and AI practice, primarily focusing on Azure and on data analytics. And we have been working on Synapse for the last 9 months, closely with multiple customers and partners, and also collaborating with the product team. So I have a few team members who are joining today. I have a senior data architect, his name is Miran, and I have a senior cloud engineer / data engineer, Gaurav, and also I have a senior data warehouse engineer, Bharat. They'll be answering some of your questions. So today's I'm going to start with some of the case studies, but I'm not going to deep dive. I'll let them kind of give a quick overview, and then We will stay on that particular slide in the case studies, and then we will take any questions and we'll keep it more as a discussion. Let me start the case study. So today I'm going to walk through like 3 different scenarios here. First one is a greenfield, where we built something on Synapse Spark Pool, a large data set for Microsoft usage team, Azure usage team, and we handled a lot of data coming into Synapse, and we did some indexing, which Miran will be talking about. And then we also handled some migration scenarios as well here, where we moved some of the data, some of the SQL Server workloads in the manufacturing industry and healthcare industry. And we had different set of challenges in each of those, and I'll walk through those problems when I get to that particular scenario. So jumping on to the case studies, on the cloud cost management team, they were collecting all Azure usage data from different region. The volume of data was huge, and there was so much latency in providing that insights to the customer. One of the project we took over was to kind of rewrite the customer usage API, where customers, enterprise EA customers, can pull their usage report with the volume of events coming in from Azure every second that we collect. And we run anomaly on top of that. And we, through the acquisition, we also transform the data and serve the customers. So we started with experimentation of Synapse, and we saw better results, and Synapse looked to be a promising tool. And now we are working with CCM team to build the next generation data platform in migrating all their integration and transformation in moving those data platforms into Azure Synapse. So I'm going to go a little bit into the slide, and then I'll have Miran kind of explain it. So previously they had HT inside Spark. They had multiple data lakes. They used to process the data in Spark and then persist the data again in the data lake. And then they have to go through this different stages of data ingestion, data acquisition, and then we go into another team where they do the data transformation. And then the other team starts reporting through the customer usage API. Current workflow, what we do is we still acquire the data and we do some early pre-processing using Spark. But once it comes into the data lake, after the anomaly is done, we just pump the data into the data Azure Synapse. And we took the Azure Synapse and we customized it to provide real-time insights for customer data. So what we did is typically Spark allows you to transform large data set and persist the data into a data lake or blob. But here we are doing both the process in parallel here. So Miran, you want to talk about the details here? Miran?
Yes, thank you, Prasad. Just to make sure, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. The majority of challenges came from re-architecting this flow, and speeding it up, of course, to the requirements of the customers. One of the things that really helped us is that Microsoft initiative in building indexing subsystem for the Spark. It's called Hyperspace. And when we started working with just migrating to a unified Spark environment, where Synapse was the tool of choice, the flow was to import data into Spark and to enable queries that will pump the data as required. However, we run into requirements of performance that this could not meet, even for the Spark. So we started searching how can we optimize the queries, and the immediate choice was indexing. And luckily we found the Hyperspace. We have partnered with the team, and the first thing we did, we implemented the index, and we saw queries go down in time execution from 400 seconds to export 50,000 records per queries, and the queries were coming in parallel, 100 queries per second, go down to something 1.2 seconds. So once we saw these results, the other thing is can we improve it even further? And currently, the Hyperspace, working with us in partnership, implemented caching of the data in memory. This push of data into memory improved performance twofold, and there is the potential to improve it even further. The Hyperspace is readily available as an open source solution. There is a GitHub repository, and it can be implemented in any Spark flavor. So that's in the high level of the story.
Yeah, so when we load the data, we are loading around 4.2 terabytes of data. Primarily, the data comes in a JSON format. We converted to PARQ format for indexing purpose, where Hyperspace does a little bit of PARQ format. The time it takes for us to load the 4 terabytes of data into Spark Pool is around less than 10 seconds or less than 10 seconds. It has been consistent with different workloads we have tested. And the majority of the time that takes is on the indexing part. The indexing takes around like 15 minutes. But what it does is it allows a query, typically the response was around 10 minutes to query a customer data. But now we are getting it in 500 milliseconds because of the architecture we implemented on top of Synapse Spark. So I would like to kind of take any questions on this architecture and maybe talk a little bit in detail and share some of our learnings of we can talk more about like the configurations we use or how much data we are pulling, how much we serialize and write it into a blob and then pass it on to the API for customers to access. So we can take some questions here if you guys have any questions on this, or I can go through some of our challenges on this area here as well. So in the meantime, I would like to go ahead and ask a few questions to Miran. So Miran, can we implement hyperspace indexing outside of Synapse Spark Pool? Does it have to be within Synapse Spark, or can it be used on any Spark workloads?
The Hyperspace as a subsystem is open source, and it can be implemented on any Spark flavor. For example, on HD Inside, or even on the local machine of a developer, if he or she needs to, for example, debug their workload on or benchmark it and see how the performance is improved by using Hyperspace index versus unindexed dataset. Thank you.
So does Hyperspace support Delta Lake?
Yes, it does.
Do we have to do anything additional for Delta Lake?
It does support data lake, and it does support on the fly a mutable data set. In other words, you can insert, update your data in the Delta Lake, and the Hyperspace index will immediately pick it up. In fact, it has even further feature where you can tailor index to specific segment of the data set by using a filtering criteria. For example, where date range such from, let's say, beginning of the year to for the latest month, or however the requirements of the data is.
So can you talk about any of the Hyperspace index? Like initially it was disk-based, and can we cache this Hyperspace index into the memory to improve the performance, further fine-tune it?
Thank you. Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, it's the feature that we are currently partnering with Hyperspace team to implement is to cache data over distributed set of course, Spark is a distributed system. So to distribute index over the nodes and to answer to fetch the rows directly from memory, as opposed to going to the disk to fetch the rows. And we already see a significant gain in performance. Thank you.
Do you want to share any performance numbers between how much percentage or in seconds, how much it improved?
Absolutely. In the current benchmark, we run off-disk row fetch and out-of-memory row fetch. And for example, 50,000 rows from dataset was returning in 1.5 seconds on average from a disk-based media, and half of the time, 0.75 seconds from memory, which is twice better. And we are working on further improving this metric because there is a potential to improve it further. Yes.
So when you talk about 1.5, what is the data size we are querying, and what is the output data size? Like how many records are we pulling at a time?
Yes. When I speak of these numbers, I always have in mind the average. That's an average performance of the query. However, our range of queries, of course, goes from something like 42 million rows for one query to something like 1,000 rows from a smaller query. And for the largest query, our velocity currently is at 250 megabytes of data streamed out of memory to the final destination, which I think is pretty pretty good. Yeah.
So Prasad, can you talk about looking at this? Obviously, the technical performance improvements that we've achieved here are tremendous. Can you talk about from the business perspective, how the customers at Microsoft, responded to this new architecture and some of the performance improvements that were achieved kind of throughout from the beginning of the load, all the way through the process where they're able to now query this data at a much faster rate than previously?
Yes, Bob. There was a latency in, as I explained, there's a huge latency in providing this insights to the customer. So where every business wants to make decisions quickly, they want to provide insights for their business teams or customers quickly. As part of that initiative, we always work with Microsoft in improving their data pipelines. We constantly, we are the one first we did from Hadoop to Spark work like 3 years back. We took it from 2 days of workload into like few hours of workload on usage that was on one pipeline. And then we continued to explore new technology. And when we found Synapse, we started experimenting it, and we found that we will be able to do concurrent process. So one of the cool thing in this architecture is even though it's implemented on Spark, we are running 100 concurrent queries, read operations at the same time. We are having around like 5 QPS, 5 queries per second from the data in memory. We keep the warm data for the last 3 months in the SQL pool in memory, and that allows customers to pull the data. So we are trying to reduce the latency of when the events get generated from 12 hours to a customer able to pull it within the 4-hour window. So it's drastically reducing. I'm hearing some background.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you sent us a copy of that too. At least I can tell.
Uh,
Sorry, Amy. I had to mute you for a second there.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So we are cutting short the time for insights, and we are also doing some ML integration work here on predicting the usage. Right now, the data is already put into another data lake, and there's a separate ML team that's primarily focused on it. But now we are trying to bake in the forecasting, time series forecasting within forecasting the usage data as well. So we were able to bring the overall cost down. We are trying to minimize the number of hops the data lakes have to take before we serve the customers. We are trying to create this common data lake pool where all the resources can come and use it as one data platform for ingesting data and ingress and egress of data. And then they can do all this security features which are integrated into Synapse now. That makes it very compelling to build this common data lake within the team that we are working with. So thank you, Bob.
Prasad, can I ask you another question on that?
Yeah, sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the Spark jobs that you're running in step 2 there versus the ones you're running in step 3? Maybe some of the nuanced differences between those and how you guys have architected that piece. I see you have Spark there in the ETL before you go into Synapse, but you also have Spark within Synapse.
So the team that we worked with, like some of the events that get generated from Azure, it goes through an acquisition pipeline, and we run some anomaly, and we kept it real. We kept the data there because we want to do some near real-time anomaly detection. We call it ART. It's an ART project, anomaly real-time. And so what we do is we look for anomalies within those usage patterns, and that kind of helps there. We didn't touch that particular thing because that data feeds into the Azure Commerce team. So that we didn't integrate it into the Synapse yet. So once the Commerce team validates the usage from classifying the usage as different types of customer types and where the customer should land and which are recognized usage. Once that happens, then we get into this data CCM platform where the data acquisition transformation happens. That's where we were able to change some of the architecture. Like previously, they didn't directly serve the customer API through Synapse. They did some pre-processing in Azure Synapse and stored it into data lake, and then they transformed the data and then put it on data lake, and then they had some data put it on put on like SQL Server, data warehouse, and they were serving different APIs through the data reporting service. So they transform the data not in memory, they transform the data and then they persisted the data in the data lake. And then once they narrow down the aggregation of data for a particular enterprise customer, the enterprise customers were able to use the API to pull the data in the previous scenario. But in this scenario, we are skipping all that steps. Like we are saying, we will keep all the memory, all the data, the hot data within the Spark pool within Synapse. And then we are running all the customers query real time. Like when customer API comes in, we immediately take it through a service bus, all the requests asynchronously. And then once the request comes in through Spark streaming, we are able to share the context of the Spark view so that we are able to, on one side, we are able to constantly load the data into the Spark in memory and then switch the context of the view. And then there is another thread that automatically, there are around like 100 threads we span, we run to parallelly run the customer queries. Depending on the type of customers, we do a little bit of prioritization and load balancing on how we split that query workload within the Spark pool. So that's how we trying to reduce the number of hops. We need to do the transformation and persist the data and try to have more data in memory and allow customers to query when the data is in memory as well. And when the memory, like beyond 3 months, we try to store some of the data into SQL Pool. Like that's where Gaurav comes in. So Gaurav, like, do you want to talk a little bit about how Synapse SQL Pool kind of helped us rather than storing, persisting the data in data lake? Even though underneath the Spark SQL Pool, there is a concept of data lake being used, but SQL Pool brings a lot of advantage to us. So Gaurav, do you want to kind of throw some insights there?
Yeah, thank you, Prasad. Hello, everyone. Just a brief introduction. I work at Microsoft as a data architect on Azure Cost Management Platform. I've been actively involved in migrating their data and processing to Synapse SQL Pool, especially the cold data or the warm data, like before 3 months data, right? So yeah, with respect to Synapse SQL Pool, so we have full control on how to distribute and partition the data. So this gave us an opportunity to structure the data in such a way that we get maximum benefits out of it, right? So basically, you have 60 compute nodes in SQL Pool, and the way you distribute your data, you can get your queries running parallelly on 60 compute nodes at a single time. So you're reading data using 60 compute nodes for one query, right? So that's the performance benefit which we got out of using SQL Pool. In our case, we were able to load almost 2 terabytes of data within 30 minutes into SQL Pool. We are able to run aggregation queries in under 1 second, and we are able to export almost 42 million records to ADLS Gen 2 account in nearly 2.5 minutes. So this is a huge benefit from how it was performing earlier. We achieved almost 70% performance gain from using SQL Pool. Apart from the performance, yeah, it definitely offers better security and access control, as in SQL Server in terms of enterprise grade security. And you get billed only when you do the compute. So you pay for the storage on the ADLS side, and then whenever you are running queries, you are paying only for that portion of the consumption. So
yeah, thank you, Gaurav. One of the thing I want to point out was the SQL Pool. We were able to load like it took 2 terabytes, 30 seconds on the SQL Pool, but the same data we were able to load within like 10 seconds. Like so the load was a little bit slower on the SQL Pool, but it kind of gives you the other benefits where we take advantage of SQL Pool, where the data is more written on ADL, where it's more reliable, and then keeping the hot data in Spark Pool helps us to query and load data much faster, because we see that 80% of our queries kind of come from the hot data, like last 3 months of data. That's where most of the queries are happening on the large data set, and we are able to provide real-time insights within that data set. So any questions from the audience? Just like
Well, no questions right now, at least in the chat, but like you're very welcome to like just pitch in, and I'm sure that you have some questions. I also recognize that in the response that some of you were seeing some challenges. It could be a question directly related to this in terms of like how quick the insights are on your end. And yeah, it's a free forum, so by all means, like throw some questions at these lovely people here.
Yeah, so Gaurav, before you get another minute, so I want to see like what kind of performance tuning did you do on SQL Pool? Did it come out of the box, or did you take advantage of any of the things that you had to do on top of what SQL Pool allows you? Like it allows you to distribute and allows you to partition the data and query and security. Those are all good. Like, did you do a lot of manual work? Can you kind of talk about like, yeah?
Yeah, so most of the features are out of box, but finding the right distribution of the data is the key here, right? So depending on your requirement, how you distribute the data is very important. We have to keep in mind the query filters, or the how the queries are. We need to analyze first the queries, whether they are based on a specific column or they are a combination of columns, and that's what drives the distribution of the data. So we tried distributing the data with different columns, and then we saw change in the performance, right? And then once we found the right distribution so that the data gets distributed almost equally amongst the 60 nodes, then we got the best performance out of it. So because all the nodes are working in parallel to get you the data, right? Apart from that, yes, we explored different options like creating statistics on specific columns which are involved in the query plan, creating materialized views wherein you can create a view which will keep the data ready for you to query rather than running the query on the entire data set. We also tried using workload management, which is a very nice feature in SQL Pool, wherein you can distribute your queries depending on their importance, how much resource you want to allocate to a specific type of query. So we use that, and we the scenarios where we want to really respond faster, we gave them higher priority, and then the other queries we kept them as normal priority, and that ways we are able to get the results according to the requirements.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Gaurav?
Prasad, we do. John Hudson actually has a question. John, I don't know if you want me to read it out loud or if you just want to like go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Jasper. Your voice
Right.
is better than mine anyway.
Well, thank you. Well, John is wondering like how well does Azure or Azure Synapse play in the AI ML space? Any thoughts on that, Prasad or Ahmed?
Yeah. You want to take it?
Why don't you take that first, Prasad? Why don't you take that?
Yeah, sure.
I'll jump in after.
Sure. So what Synapse has allowed us to do is like to integrate with Azure ML, very much integrated into the Azure Synapse product, where you can bring in your notebooks and do some experiments without having to isolate the data for your data scientists. So with respect to our experience on Azure Synapse and ML, we are doing a couple of products on data and AI, like on the time series data, which I'll be doing another presentation in detail. I'll be covering some of our the products we are doing more on time series forecasting, more on demand generation and all that. So that's kind of built on, we experimented it on Databricks, HD Insight, Spark, and it's multi-platform. So we are running it on Spark, and we see how well it's integrated with ML notebooks, and we are taking advantage of Synapse in deploying that particular product offering for our customers. Yeah. So, and some of the experiments we are doing with respect to the usage predictions, that's where we are bringing in some of the ML predictions as well within Synapse as well. So it very well integrates with Azure Synapse. So I'm going to
Sorry, go ahead, Prasad.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And just to piggyback off of that, one of the other things as well, and some of this stuff is under NDA, so I can't technically reveal it yet, but we have other, let's just say that Microsoft is looking to integrate more of our AI abilities within Azure Synapse. So there are services that we have that we are we're looking to make it, again, be more of a one-stop shop in there. But for now, what I can definitely say is that a lot of our AI and ML users that coming in from the SQL data world, the data warehousing, whether it's Azure SQL Data Warehouse or whether it's SQL Server, a lot of them are also looking to run more ML jobs that are part of the ETL process, so more batch processing. That lends itself very nicely within the Synapse framework, because those models can be brought in, and those ETL jobs within your daily data warehousing world can integrate and run side by side with maybe you're running some batch scripts for ML that you're from the night before's data loads will be applied there as well. So it does tie those two seamlessly. But there are other features that I can't get into right now in detail, but you will start seeing them when they become generally available within Synapse and AI.
Yeah, thank you. One last question, like, can this, I want to ask to Miran. So do you think like this reference architecture can be implemented on other frameworks where Spark can be executed, like HD Insight or Databricks? Miran?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, it's very flexible, and the interface of this system is essentially a listener, a network listener, where we're receiving events from the Azure service bus, and that is absolutely open architecture. It can be ported.
Thank you.
One of the things I wanted to point out is the benefit of this entire subsystem that we're implementing. Although its compute looks impressive, because Spark has always used a lot of compute, as far as impact, the previous system needed 7 times more compute to produce the same output in significantly greater amount of time. So there are cost benefits to this system. Thank you. I'm done.
Yeah, I would like to quickly go into the next case study. I have Bharat, who's working with one of our manufacturing customer. One of the challenge here was the number of, it's a typical medium enterprise, I would say, where there are like data is small, but they have ton of database. They have multiple database system organically grown, and multiple SQL developers. They have developed like multiple jobs. So their issue was like scale was an issue. They were on-prem. We kind of helped them to kind of, they want to do some ML and AI ability. They want to bring in more data from other sources like semi-structured. So we did some Synapse work, and then there were some benefits we got. I'll let Bharat kind of explain it and take it from there. Bharat?
Yeah, hi Prasad, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. So this particular client had a use case where they were heavily invested in SAP. So they had a lot of materials, transportation, logistics, and other manufacturing related systems built on SAP. Apart from that, they also had data coming in from recruiting systems, then Oracle itself. Then they had some Active Directory data, SharePoint sites, and there was certain other heterogeneous sources. So in the current state, with all these heterogeneous sources, they were using SSIS, primarily SQL Server jobs, to have all data land into SQL Server's on-prem machine. And they had a couple of long-running jobs. And finally, they used to report the data into Cubes or Power BI. So looking at this, there are a lot of challenges. And so we figured out that if we move to cloud, then there's a lot of cost benefits, and also data, there could be a lot new data access patterns and things like that. So to move towards cloud, we did assess a couple of technologies available, and we did find that Synapse had a better benefit in terms of what we could do. And this is the system we proposed, and let me just go through like what we finally did. So again, as you can see on the left hand side, we have SAP, then we have those Oracle sources, and we have flat files and all. We ingested all these data sets using integration runtimes. So once we set up all up pipelines in Azure Synapse, we were able to reuse the existing SIS packages itself. Most of the packages we were able to reuse, so we were able to reduce the amount of rework required, since we were able to use the existing packages itself. So we brought in all the data into a staging set of tables. whenever there were files involved, we got them into blobs. And then we did all our ETL processing in Spark. So because of this, like we were able to increase the amount of compute. Earlier, it was difficult for us to scale on SQL Server, but now since we are on Synapse, we were able to increase the compute and we were able to reduce a lot of the existing job execution times. And finally, we were also able to create a set of output tables, so which were primarily used by our by the reporting layer. The reporting layer were either Power BI reports or analysis services cubes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Bharat. Like, other than the scale, right? Other than scale and security, can you talk specifically about customer? Like, how did they benefit? Like, how did they save the money? Like, beyond the number of compute got reduced, they only pay for when compute is being used. Is there any other savings that they had, like operational savings because of this?
Yes, yes. In fact, what we realized is like earlier, right? For moving data from SAP into SQL Server, they were using third-party tools like Attunity and all. But the key point there is Attunity works well. Now it's called Click. It does work well, but you need a certain higher SAP license. So just because they had to use Attunity to easily get in the data, they were using they had to pay more for the SAP licenses. But now what we did is we used out-of-the-box SAP connectors in Synapse. So thereby there was no need for for Click. And because of that, they were able to tone down the ACP license costs as well. So that is a big, it's like a six-figure benefit that they got. So that is the first benefit. And also, since we are on cloud, we had a very good operational benefit as well. The third key benefit is earlier, like if they're also trying to have data scientists explore into to do more of machine learning work and all, but that always required us to scale up the server or like give them dedicated slot when they could access queries and data and all, because we also had our ETL running, right? But now, since we brought in all data into a lake like under Synapse, so we were able to just increase the compute whenever they needed. So it was easy so it was more of we prepared a data lake where stewards like data scientists, ETL developers, then business users, data analysts, all could access the data. So it was easier for us to provision them additional compute or even grant them easy access to the data. So this was this was difficult in the on-prem world because we had to scale them, and also still we could we'll see some contention issues and things like that. So yeah, these are at least three key benefits that
And anything on the Power BI workspace or like anything changed on that end?
Yes. So all this time I was just talking about the benefits on the ingestion and processing. There is also one more result we got. I mean, one more benefit we got on the Power BI workspace side as well. So basically, today we're using a lot of Power BI premium workspaces. They had to go with premium because even though since we use SQL Server, uh, we're not able to scale it, so we were not able to create another set of complicated reporting tables and also. Instead, what users did is they kind of consumed the data that we were exposing on SQL Server. They got it into Power BI workspace, and they did furthermore complicated queries on that. And that needed this premium capacity. But instead, once we set up Synapse, we were able to allocate them additional schemas and workspaces where people were able to do all those complicated queries in Synapse itself. So thereby, we were able to reduce the cost of Power BI premium as well. Like instead of we were able to reduce a lot of the Power BI premium capacity. So finally they were able to use Power BI only for reporting rather than doing those analytical computes as well. So this will be a fourth benefit. True.
Yeah, thank you, Bharat. So Jasper, I have another case study I would like to talk about, but I think with the interest of time,
yeah, we are running a little low on time here. So I also posted it in the chat, like since I do believe we actually only have 2 minutes left there. I also wanted to give the word out to the audience here. Like, if you have anything, just like any challenges, anything specific that you guys are dealing with, and you would like just some quick insight from these gentlemen currently on the call, by all means, reach out. Like that's partly why we have the Fireside Chat. Otherwise, Prasad will use the rest of the time to go over, or if we even have time for that. to go over.
So I think we don't have much time here. Yeah, this was another customer where healthcare, we integrated with multiple system. We removed the complexity, reduced the cost. They benefited a lot. We can go deep dive into the next fireside chat, more into this particular scenario here. I want to quickly say from Firesoft, we work closely with Microsoft. We get Microsoft funding, so we offer like 1-day assessments or 2-week pilot POCs for our customers. We can quickly do the assessment and share the outcome of like if you're still kicking the tires on seeing whether Synapse is a good fit, we can do a quick POC or pilot to validate whether Synapse is a good fit for your organization, whether you're using HD Insight or Databricks or Snowflake. Then we can look at whether Synapse gives you that cost benefit that we have seen. Rather than paying the DBUs, we can take advantage of Synapse, just paying the infrastructure cost there. And then there are like multiple feature parities with Databricks, and there are a lot of advancement coming into Synapse in terms of Delta Lake processing and Hyperspace. So we want to take advantage of that. So the last slide is more on, we have these reference architectures that we have built that are deployable into any scenarios. And then we help customers to migrate from Hadoop to Spark or improve their Spark pipelines in cutting down the overall time in terms of how much time it takes to bring the data into Spark, process it. We can help them to do help in partitions or writing better Spark queries, and also with helping with hyperspace indexing and distributing the data differently in their data platforms. So we have some of those abilities as well. So I would like to, with the interest of time, if there is any questions, everybody, I can kind of take it to the last part.
Yeah, so just to grab the ball here at the end of it, if you have any further questions or regarding any of the Microsoft funded work that we do, by all means send an email to my email. I linked it in the chat. We'll be happy to also send you guys some further information. That's also super possible. And again, I want to also thank our expert panel, Bharat, Miran, Gaurav, for attending. We really appreciate your time. And as always, like Prasad and Ahmed, you guys are amazing, and thank you. And yeah, by all means, be sure to send me an email. It could be the smallest thing, that would be perfectly fine, and then I'll make sure that it gets to the right owner, and we can take it from there. So with that, I really want to say thank you to all of you for attending the Fireside Chat, and I hope to see you in one of our next sessions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.